Saxophonist Bill Evans grew up in the Chicago suburb of Clarendon Hills, Illinois. He went to North Texas State for a year in '76, then transferred to William Patterson College in New Jersey for 2.5 years and received his BA in music in 1980. 2 months later, after graduation, all of 21 years old, he got a call from the great Miles Davis to help form his new band. Interestingly enough, he would be the second Bill Evans to join Miles Davis. The first Bill Evans is the great piano legend who was in the group along with John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley in the late 50s. Bill stayed with Miles, recording and touring for close to 4 years. In 1984, he joined guitarist John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra for 3.5 years. Presently, Bill Evans' time is divided between educational clinics, touring with vocalist Michael Franks, and project with his own band. He's recorded several albums under his own name. This segment of Jazz Masters features a new generation of jazz artists who have learned the art form through a combination of institutionalized education and actual experience. This is how most of today's artists learn about jazz. Consequently, they tend to share common perspectives and career goals. Speaking with several of today's finest artists at the 1988 National Association of Jazz Educators Convention held in Detroit, we hope to gain insight into the future evolution of America's original art form, jazz.
I live in New York at the moment. I was born in New Jersey, and I've been out playing music for about the last 12 years, I guess. Started playing with Gary Burton Group for about a year, and then Pat Metheny Group for 6 years, and then John McLaughlin Group, and then Al Di Meola. And now I play with Gil Evans, and I have my own solo record that just came out on Atlantic 2 months ago called Aquamarine, and it's a great record.
Right.
It's my first solo one as a leader, and I really like it a lot. Just like anything else, you know, you start to study and you start to grow and you just want to always keep getting better and go as far as you can. And pretty much the whole lineage of great drummers, great musicians, great rock musicians. I mean, I listen to every kind of music. I study the drummers all the way back to Baby Dodds up through Jack DeJohnette in the jazz lineage. I listen to John Bonham. I listen to Led Zeppelin. You know, I listen to modern music. I listen to pop music, everything, classical music.
I see a combination of rock and roll and jazz and different, the combination of all kinds of music into it. To call it jazz, a lot of people think they either think mainstream music or they just think instrumental. And a lot of people who are coming from the public that don't know anything about music think jazz is Grover Washington, or Kenny G, which is not necessarily so. So I think in the future it's going to have to do with whatever young people of today are given the opportunity and also have the talent to push it somewhere and do, and not just fall into the trends of everyone else just because it's supposedly this thing will sell or this thing will do that. If they're given the opportunities to take a chance, and they do, and they go with it. There are not that many people that'll do that.
I was on a panel recently for the magazine Jazz Times, and we were talking about this new age influx and what's going on in the world of music as I see it relative to the quote-unquote jazz or instrumental musician, is that the formats are changing because of the success of instrumental music, which has been called New Age, which is basically Windham Hill Records. They're selling so many records that all the major record companies are starting instrumental divisions. And what's happening is most people don't know the difference between New Age and fusion and traditional jazz that are in the record companies, as I see it. Not to put them down, but what's happening is a lot of jazz musicians are getting record deals under the guise of being called New Age. Jerry Goodman, the violin player, being called one of the innovators of New Age music. This guy was in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, so it's in a way it's very positive for the music. And even though I myself wouldn't compare George Winston and Keith Jarrett in the same breath in terms of a piano technique, I certainly don't put him down at all. In fact, I'm very happy that he sells a lot of records, because if someone listens to George Winston, they just might get a chance to listen to Keith Jarrett. And radio stations are changing formats left and right to accommodate instrumental music. My record on Atlantic was a direct result of this new influx of instrumental music. And I think it's all positive for the industry. I see a lot of breaking down of borders, for example, like Sting's new record. Is it jazz? Is it rock? Is it reggae? It's kind of all of that stuff. And what's going on is these boundaries are being crossed left and right. Kenny G's success, you're going to get jazz purists that are going to hate that music and put it down. I don't particularly like it that much, but I'm happy that he sold 2 million records, because it's going to mean, the guy at Atlantic that signed me thinks that, maybe I'll sell records like Kenny G. So it means for all the jazz musicians of the world, it's a real good time for music. And that's what I see the new trends being. Seems to be an interest in instrumental music, whatever you call it, on a much higher, a much more intense level because of the success of New Age music than ever before. So I think it's a great time. Plus the fact that rock and roll bands are kind of crossing the boundaries into jazz and jazz into rock, and what was called jazz so many years ago doesn't have that label.
Who do you consider as some of today's innovators?
It's hard to say. I think Joe Zawinul was always an innovator. I think Miles is always an innovator. John McLaughlin is certainly an innovator. And not just because I played with them, it's because I really believe they are. Sting, to a certain extent, is an innovator, without a doubt. Anybody who really tries to push boundaries anywhere, takes a chance on doing what they really believe in their head, is an innovator. Not necessarily somebody who's going to, not necessarily whether they do or not innovate anything, but somebody who's going to like doing what they believe in musically. You know? They're innovating. They're doing something different. And a lot of times it doesn't necessarily have to change the face of music, but it'll change it to a certain degree. Maybe a small, minuscule amount or a huge amount like Miles. You know, it all varies. But anybody who really has a concept in their head that's, you know, like the beat of a different drummer kind of thing, you got to give them credit. You know, that's where it's going to come from.
Add their own voice.
Add their own voice. That's where it's, you know, innovation's going to come from. I don't think that anybody who's going to go out and like push music from 1950s or 60s and say that they're innovating. They're not doing. They're establishing it. They're saying they're establishing it more if it can be established more. They're not innovating it.
What would you like to see changed in the industry?
Critics that don't know what they're talking about, and more openness to new ideas from record companies. You know, record companies need to give more. They need to like there needs to be some label, somebody that's innovative as far as the industry is concerned, that's going to have the money to do the new projects with. You know? I mean, that's what's going to give guys the opportunities to like really spread their wings, so to say, and do their thing. Because that can be a big problem. You could have some great bands that if they had the chance to get out there and do it in those circumstances, they might be great. But not being in that situation, they might not get a chance to play. Not, you know, and there's a lot of people that only really perform and be innovative in front of large amounts of people. That might be their thing. You know, I mean, if they're never in that situation. Or small groups or clubs or whatever. Maybe they can only able to play once every 6 months. I mean, that makes a difference.
I think it's going in a great direction, and the main thing that I got out of it was a chance to play with people. Like I say, I met Pat Metheny, Mark Egan, the late, great Jaco Pastorius there, Steve Morris, all the guys from the Dixie Dregs, Hiram Bullock, a lot of the musicians I still play with, and I mean, you're about to talk to Bill Evans in a few minutes. I didn't meet him at school there, but I met him through Mark Egan, who I went to college with, Cliff Carter. You know, it's a breeding ground of meeting musicians and also finding a place to perform. Instead of having to hit the streets cold out of high school, or whenever you decide to go to school, it's a great chance to experiment. You don't have to worry about making a living. When you're in college, you know, assuming that you have enough money to sustain yourself. If not, what I did is I worked my way through the University of Miami playing shows and club dates, whatever I had to do to make enough to go there. So it worked out great, and the biggest thing I got, besides getting an education, I graduated with a degree. You know, the degree itself doesn't mean that much, but I got a full education, much to my parents' happiness. But I got to play and gain experience without having the pressures of the everyday working world, and that's a great thing about college.
We will continue this part of the Jazz Master series with more insights and performances with young artists such as Irene Rosnes and Out of the Blue from Blue Note Records, the Holiday Brothers, and veterans Duffy Jackson and multi-instrumentalist Ira Sullivan, and more. So please stay tuned to Jazz Masters as we bring you more of America's original art form, jazz.